This generation, Elon Musk.
Hey guys. I'm gonna grab my stuff. You sit there. I'm gonna take this.
All right. Thanks for taking the time. How you doing, brother? You keeping busy?
Yeah. I mean, it's rarely a slow week. I mean, in the world as well.
Yeah. It does.
I mean, any given week, it just seems like the things get nuttier.
It's definitely a simulation. We've agreed on this at this point.
I mean, if we are in some alien Netflix series, I think the ratings are high.
Yes. Ratings are high. How are the freedom of speech wars going? This is you've been at war for 2 years now.
Yes.
The price of freedom of speech is not cheap, is it?
I think it's like 44 billion, something like that.
Just
Round numbers.
give or take $1 billion.
Yeah, round numbers. Yeah. It's pretty nutty. There is like this weird movement to quell free speech kind of around the world, and this is something we should be very concerned about. You have to ask, like, why was the First Amendment like a high priority? It was like number one. It's because people came from countries where if you spoke freely, you would be imprisoned or killed. And they were like, well, we'd like to not have that here. Because that was terrible.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a lot of places in the world right now, if you're critical of the government, you get imprisoned or killed.
Right.
Yeah, and we'd like to not have that.
Are you concerned?
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
I mean, I suspect this is a receptive audience to that message.
Yeah. In France, and then of course we got Brazil with Judge Voldemort. That one seems like the one that impacts you the most. What's the latest on that?
Well, I guess we are trying to figure out, is there some reasonable solution in Brazil? The concern, I want to just make sure that this is framed correctly. Funny memes aside, the nature of the concern was that, at least at X Corp, we had the perception that we were being asked to do things that violated Brazilian law. So obviously we cannot, as an American company, impose American laws and values on other countries. But we do, think that if a country's laws are a particular way, and we're being asked to we think we're being asked to break them, then and be silent about it, then obviously that is no good. Mm-hmm. So I just want to be clear, because this sometimes comes across as Elon's trying to just be a crazy whatever billionaire and demand outrageous things from other countries, and while that is true, in addition, there are other things that I think are valid, which is like we obviously can't. I think any given thing that we do at X Corp, we've got to be able to explain in the light of day and not feel that it was dishonorable or we did the wrong thing. So we don't. That's the nature of the concern. So we actually are in sort of discussions with the judicial authorities in Brazil to try to run this to ground. Like what's actually going on? Like if we're being asked to break the law, Brazilian law, then that obviously should not sit well with the Brazilian judiciary. And if we're not and we're mistaken, we'd like to understand how we're mistaken. I think that's a pretty reasonable position.
I'm a bit concerned, as your friend, that you're going to go to one of these countries, and I'm going to wake up one day and you're going to get arrested, and like I'm going to have to go bail you out or something. Like feels very acute. Like,
Yes.
I mean, it's not a joke now. Like they're literally saying like, it's not just Biden saying like we have to look into that guy. Now it's become quite literal. Like this. I don't. Who was the guy who just wrote the? Was it the Guardian piece about like?
Oh
hey,
yeah. There have been 3 articles, and I think in the past 3 weeks.
Robert Reich.
But it wasn't just him. It was like
Yeah.
3 different articles
3 different articles. Yeah.
in the Guardian. Guardian of what?
What are they protecting exactly? Yeah.
Guardian of, I don't know.
Authoritarianism?
Yeah. Guardian of,
Yeah. Censorship?
Censorship.
But the premise here is that you bought this thing, this online forum, this communication platform, and you're allowing people to use it to express themselves. Therefore, you have to be jailed. I don't understand the logic here.
Right.
What do you think they're actually afraid of at this point? What's the motivation here?
I mean, I think if somebody's afraid, if somebody's sort of trying to push a false premise on the world, then that premise can be undermined with public dialogue, then they will be opposed to public dialogue on that premise because they wish that false premise to prevail.
Right.
So that's, I think, the issue there is if they don't like the truth, then we want to suppress it. So now, what we're trying to do with X Corp is I distinguish that from my son, who's also called X.
Yes. Right. You have parental goals, and then you have goals for the company.
Everything's just called X, basically.
Yes.
It's very difficult disambiguation.
The car, the sun.
Yeah, it's X everything. What we're trying to do is simply adhere to the laws in a country. So if something is illegal in the United States, or if it's illegal in Europe or Brazil or wherever it might be, then we will take it down or we'll suspend the account because we're not there to make the laws. But if speech is not illegal, then what are we doing? Okay, now we're injecting ourselves in as a censor, and where does it stop? And who decides? So, and where does that path lead? I think it leads to a bad place. So if the people in a country want the laws to be different, they should make the laws different. But otherwise, we're going to obey the law in each jurisdiction.
Right, and some of these European...
That's it. It's not more complicated than that. We're not trying to flout the law. I'm going to be clear about that. We're trying to adhere to the law. And if the laws change, we will change. And if the laws don't change, we won't. We're just literally trying to adhere to the law.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yes, it's very straightforward. And if somebody thinks we're not adhering to the law, well, they can file a lawsuit. Bingo.
Also very straightforward. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, there are European countries that don't want people to promote Nazi propaganda.
Yes.
They have some sensitivity to it.
Well, it is illegal.
It is illegal in those countries.
It is legal.
And in those countries, if somebody puts that up, you take it down.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
Well, I mean, I think with great difficulty. But look, it's been a long time since there was a serious effort to reduce the size of government and to remove absurd regulations.
Yeah.
And the last time there was a really concerted effort on that front was Reagan in the early '80s. So we're 40 years away from a serious effort to remove regulations that don't serve the greater good and reduce the size of government. And I think it's just, if we don't do that, then what's happening is that we get regulations and laws accumulating every year until eventually everything's illegal. And that's why we can't get major infrastructure projects done in the United States. Like if you look at the absurdity of the California high-speed rail, I think they've spent $7 billion and have a 1,600-foot segment that doesn't actually have rail in it. I mean, your tax dollars at work, I mean...
Yeah, what are we doing?
Well, that's an expensive 1,600 feet of concrete, And I mean, I think it's like if, I realize sometimes I'm perhaps a little optimistic with schedules, but you know, I mean, I wouldn't be doing the things I'm doing if I was, you know, not an optimist. But at the current trend, you know, California high-speed rail might finish sometime next century. Maybe, but probably not.
We'll have teleportation by that time. So.
Yeah, exactly. We'll just have the AI do everything at that point. So like any one given regulation is not that bad, but you've got a million of them, and or millions actually, and then eventually you just can't get anything done. And this is a massive tax on the consumer, on the people. It's just they don't realize that there's this massive tax in the form of irrational regulations. I'll give you a recent example that you know is just insane. Is that like SpaceX was fined by the EPA $140,000 for they claimed dumping potable water on the ground, drinking water. So. And we're like, this is at Starbase, and we're like, we're in a tropical thunderstorm region. That stuff comes from the sky all the time, and there was no actual harm done. You know, it was just water to cool the launch pad during liftoff, and there's zero harm done. Like, and they agree, yes, there's zero harm done. And we're like, okay, so there's no harm done, and but you want us to pay a $140,000 fine? It's like, yes, because you didn't have a permit. Okay. We didn't know there was a permit needed for zero harm fresh water being on the ground in a place where fresh water falls from the sky all the time.
Got it. Next to the ocean.
Next to the ocean.
Because there's a little bit of water there too.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it rains so much the roads are flooded. So we're like, you know, how does this make any sense?
Yeah.
And then they were like, well, we're not going to process any more of your applications for launch, for Starship launch, unless you pay this $140,000. So they just ransomed us, and we're like, okay, so we paid $140,000. But it's like, this is no good. I mean, at this rate, we're never going to get to Mars.
I mean, that's the confounding part here.
Yeah.
Is we're acting against our own self-interest. Texas, you were able to build the Gigafactory. I remember when you got the plot of land, and then it seemed like it was less than 2 years when you had the party to open it.
Yeah. From start of construction to completion was 14 months. 14 months.
Is there anywhere on the planet that would go faster? Is like China faster than that?
China was 11 months.
Got it. So Texas, China, 11 and 14 months. California, how many months?
And just to give you a sense of size, our Tesla Gigafactory in China is 3 times the size of the Pentagon.
Which was the biggest building in America?
No, there are bigger buildings, but the Pentagon's a pretty big one.
Yeah, or it was the biggest.
In units of Pentagon, it's like 3.
Okay, 3 Pentagons and counting.
Yeah.
Got it.
In 14 months. Just the regulatory approvals in California would have taken 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's the issue.
Where do you think the regulation helps? Like for the people that will say, we need some checks and balances. We can't have some, because for every good actor like you, there'll be a bad actor. So where is that line then? Yeah,
I mean, I haven't in sort of doing sensible deregulation and reduction in the size of government is just like be very public about it and say like, which of these rules do you, if the public is really excited about a rule and wants to keep it, we'll just keep it. Yeah. And here's the thing about the rules: if the rule is turns out to be a bad, we'll just put it right back. Okay, and then problem solved. It's like it's easy to add rules, but we don't actually have a process for getting rid of them. That's the issue. There's no garbage collection for rules.
When we were watching you work, David and I and Antonio, in that first month at Twitter, which was all hands on deck, and you were doing zero-based budgeting, you really quickly got the costs under control, and then miraculously, everybody said this site will go down, and you added 50 more features. So maybe explain, because this is the first time.
Yeah, there were so many articles like that this is Twitter is dead forever. There's no way it could possibly even continue at all.
It was almost like the press was
It's like,
rooting for you to
RIP,
fail.
let's write the obituary. Like, here's the obituary.
They're all saying their goodbyes on Twitter. Remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They were all leaving and saying their goodbyes because the site was going to melt down. And
Yeah, to totally fail and
All the journalists left.
yeah. And
But if you could just pair 2, 3, 4, 5% of those organizations, what kind of impact could that have?
yeah, I mean, I think we'd need to do more than that. I think,
Ideally, but
yeah.
compounding every year, 2 or 3% a year, I mean, it would be better than what's happening now.
yeah, look, I think we've you know, if Trump wins, and obviously I suspect there are people with mixed feelings about whether that should happen, but we do have an opportunity to do kind of a once-in-a-lifetime deregulation and reduction in the size of government. Because the other thing, besides the regulations, America is also going bankrupt extremely quickly. And everyone seems to be sort of whistling past the graveyard on this one. The Defense Department budget is a very big budget, okay? It's $1 trillion a year, DoD, Intel, it's $1 trillion. And interest payments on the national debt just exceeded the Defense Department budget. They're over $1 trillion a year, just in interest, and rising. We're adding $1 trillion to our debt, which our kids and grandkids are going to have to pay somehow. Every 3 months, and then soon it's going to be every 2 months, and then every month, and then the only thing we'll be able to pay is interest. And if this is, it's just it's just like a person at scale that has racked up too much credit card debt, and this does not have a good ending. And so we have to reduce the spending.
Let me ask one question, because I've brought this up a lot, and the counter-argument I hear, which I disagree with, but the counter-argument I hear from a lot of politicians is if we reduce spending, because right now if you add up federal, state, and local government spending, it's between 40 and 50% of GDP. So nearly half of our economy is supported by government spending, and nearly half of people in the United States are dependent directly or indirectly on government checks, and either through contractors that the government pays, or they're employed by a government entity. So if you go in and you take too hard an axe too fast, you will have significant contraction, job loss, and recession. What's the balancing act, Elon? Just thinking realistically, because I'm 100% on board with you. The next set of steps, however, assume Trump wins and you become the chief DOGE of DOG, like double G. And I think the challenge is how quickly can we go in? How quickly can things change? And without
I want that on my business card.
Yeah. without all the contraction and job loss. Yeah. So I guess, how do you really address it when so much of the economy and so many people's jobs and livelihoods are dependent on government spending?
Well, I mean, I do think it's sort of it's a false dichotomy. It's not like no government spending is going to happen. You really have to say, like, is it the right level? And just remember that any given person, if they are doing things in a less efficient organization versus a more efficient organization, their contribution to the economy, their net output of goods and services will reduce. I mean, you've got a couple of clear examples between East Germany and West Germany, North Korea and South Korea. I mean, North Korea, they're starving. South Korea, it's like amazing.
It's the future.
The compounding effect of productivity gains. Yeah.
Yeah, it's night and day.
Yeah.
And so in the North Korea, you've got 100% government. In South Korea, you've got probably, 40% government. It's not zero. Yeah. And yet you've got a standard of living that is probably 10 times higher in South Korea. At least, exactly. And then East and West Germany, in West Germany, you had, just thinking in terms of cars, I mean, you had BMW, Porsche, Audi, Mercedes, and East Germany, which is a random line on a map. The only car you could get was a Trabant, which is basically a lawnmower with a shell on it. And it's just the same. So that's just an interesting example of like basically the same people, different operating system. Half government in West Germany and 100% government in East Germany. And again, it's sort of a 5 to, I'd like call at least a 5 to 10x standard of living difference, and even qualitatively vastly better. And it's obviously, sometimes people have these, amazingly in this modern era, this debate as to which system is better. Well, I'll tell you which system is better. The one that doesn't need to build the wall to keep people in. Okay, that's how you can tell. Okay,
Yeah.
it's a dead giveaway.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Wait, so your point is jobs will be created. If we cut government spending in half,
Yes.
jobs will be created fast enough to make up for, right, just to count.
Yes. Also,
In 4 years, if you could shrink the size of the government with Trump, what would be a good target? Just in terms of like ballpark.
I mean, are you trying to get me assassinated before this even happens?
No.
Like, if you have a once in a lifetime or once in a generation opportunity, and you don't take serious action, and then you have 4 years to get it done, and then if it doesn't get done, then
How serious is Trump about this? Like you've talked to him about it, yeah?
yeah, I think
He's serious.
he is very serious about it.
Got it.
And no, I think actually the reality is that if we get rid of nonsense regulations and shift people from the government sector to the private sector, we will have immense prosperity, and I think we will have a golden age in this country. And it'll be fantastic.
Can we talk about SpaceX? You have a bunch of critical milestones coming up.
Yeah, in fact, there's a very exciting launch that is maybe happening tonight. So if the weather is holding up, then this will be the first time, the first commercial spacewalk, and it'll be at the highest altitude since Apollo. So it's the furthest from Earth that anyone's gone.
And what comes after that? Let's assume that's successful. And
I sure hope so, man.
No pressure.
Yeah, we're absolutely astronaut safety is, man. If I had like all the wishes I could save up, that'd be the one to put on. So, space is dangerous. So the next milestone after that would be the next flight of Starship, which Starship the next flight of Starship is ready to fly. We are waiting for regulatory approval.
Yeah.
It really should not be possible to build a giant rocket faster than the paper can move from one desk to another.
Really hard. Approved.
Yeah.
You ever see that movie Zootopia?
Approved.
You ever see that movie Zootopia? There's like a sloth.
He's coming in for the approval.
Yeah, and then he accidentally tell a joke, and I was like, oh no, this is
No, here we go.
This is going to take a long time.
Sorry.
The government is more competent than it is. I'm not saying that there aren't competent people in the government. They're just in an operating system that is inefficient. Once you move them to a more efficient operating system, their output is dramatically greater, as we've seen. When East Germany was reintegrated with West Germany, and the same people were vastly more prosperous with a basically half-capitalist operating system. So, but I mean, for a lot of people, their maybe most direct experience with the government is the DMV. And then the important thing to remember is that the government is the DMV at scale.
Right.
That's the government.
Got the mental picture.
How much do you want to scale it? So, we think we'll be able to to launch reliably and repeatedly and quite quickly. And the fundamental holy grail breakthrough for rocketry, the fundamental breakthrough that is needed for life to become multiplanetary is a rapidly reusable, reliable rocket. RRR. Yeah. With a pirate somehow. Throw pirate in there. So with Starship is the first rocket design where success is one of the possible outcomes with full reusability. Starship not only is full reusability in the set of possible outcomes, it is being proven with each launch. And I'm confident it will succeed. It's simply a matter of time. And it's incredibly important that we have things that we find inspiring, that you look to the future and say the future is going to be better than the past, things to look forward to. And like kids are a good way to assess this. Like, what are kids fired up about? And if you can say, you could be an astronaut on Mars. You could maybe one day go beyond the solar system. We could make Star Trek, Starfleet Academy real. You need things that move your heart.
Right.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. Let's do it. Fuck.
Yeah. Like life can't just be about solving one miserable problem after another.
Right.
There's got to be things that you look forward to as well.
Yeah.
Is going on that led to Boeing building the Starliner the way that they did. They were able to get it up.
But not complete.
But can't complete.
They can't finish.
Can't finish. And
I don't
now
understand.
you're going to have to go up and finish.
Well, I think Boeing is a company that is, they actually do so much business with the government. They have sort of impedance match to the government. So they're like basically one notch away from the government, maybe two. They're not far from the government from an efficiency standpoint because they derive so much of their revenue from the government. And a lot of people think, well, SpaceX is super dependent on the government, and actually, no, most of our revenue is commercial. And there's been, I think, at least up until perhaps recently, because they have a new CEO who actually shows up in the factory.
Yeah.
And the CEO before that, I think, had a degree in accounting and never went to the factory, and didn't know how airplanes flew. So I think if you are in charge of a company that makes airplanes fly, and a spacecraft go to orbit,
You need to know the rocket
then
equation.
it can't be a total mystery as to how they work.
Yeah.
So, I'm like, sure, if somebody's like running Coke or Pepsi and they're like great at marketing or whatever, that's fine, because it's not a sort of technology dependent business. Or if they're running a financial consulting and their degrees in accounting, that makes sense. But I think if you're the cavalry captain, you should know how to ride a horse.
Pretty basic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Shifting gears to AI, Peter was here earlier and he was talking about how so far the only company to really make money off AI is NVIDIA with the chips.
I think the spending on AI probably runs ahead of, it does run ahead of the revenue right now. There's no question about that. But the rate of improvement of AI is faster than any technology I've ever seen by far. And it's, for example, the Turing test used to be a thing. Now, your basic open source random LLM running on a friggin' Raspberry Pi probably could, beat the Turing test. The good future of AI is one of immense prosperity, where there is an age of abundance, no shortage of goods and services. Everyone can have whatever they want, except for things we artificially define to be scarce, like some special artwork. But anything that is a manufactured good or provided service will, I think, with the advent of AI plus robotics, that the cost of goods and services will trend to zero. Like, I'm not saying it'll be actually zero, but it'll be, everyone will be able to have anything they want. That's the good future. Of course, and in my view, that's probably 80% likely. So look on the bright side. Only 20%. 20% probability of annihilation. It's nothing.
Is the 20% like, what does that look like?
I don't know, man. I mean, frankly, I do have to go engage in some degree of deliberate suspension of disbelief with respect to AI in order to sleep well, and even then, because I think the actual issue, the most likely issue, is like, well, how do we find meaning in a world where AI can do everything we can do, but better? That is perhaps the bigger challenge. You need the sort of end effectors. You need the autonomous cars, and you need the sort of humanoid robots or general purpose robots. But once you have general purpose humanoid robots and autonomous vehicles, you can build anything. And there's, I think that there's no actual limit to the size of the economy. I mean, there's obviously, the mass of Earth, like that will be one limit. But the economy is really just the average productivity per person times number of people. That's the economy. And if you've got humanoid robots that can do, where there's no real limit on the number of humanoid robots, and they can operate very intelligently, then there's no actual limit to the economy. There's no meaningful limit to the economy.
You guys just turned on Colossus, which
Yeah.
is like the largest private compute cluster, I guess, of GPUs anywhere. Is that right?
It's the most powerful supercomputer of any kind.
Which sort of speaks to what David said and kind of what Peter said, which is a lot of the kind of economic value so far of AI has entirely gone to NVIDIA. But there are people with alternatives, and you're actually one with an alternative. Now, you have a very specific case because Dojo is really about images and large images, huge video. So
the Tesla problem is different from the sort of LLM problem. The nature of the intelligence and what matters in the AI is different to the point you just made, which is that in Tesla's case, the context length is very long. So we've got gigabytes of context.
Gigabyte context windows, yeah.
Yeah, you've got sort of.
I was just bringing it up.
Kind of billions of tokens of context,
Right.
nutty amount of context, because you've got seven cameras, and if you've got several, let's say you've got a minute of several high def cameras, then that's gigabytes. So you need to compress. So the Tesla problem is you've got to compress a gigantic context into the pixels that actually matter, and condense that over a time. And so you've got to, in both the time dimension and the space dimension, you've got to compress the pixels in space and the pixels over in time, and then have that inference done on a tiny computer, relatively speaking, a small, like a few hundred watts. It's a Tesla-designed AI inference computer, which is, by the way, still the best. There isn't a better thing we could buy from suppliers. So the Tesla-designed AI inference computer that's in the cars is better than anything we could buy from any supplier. So, there's training and inference, and we do have those two projects at Tesla. We've got Dojo, which is the training computer, and then our inference chip, which is in every car, inference computer. So, and Dojo, we've only had Dojo 1. Dojo 2 is, we should have Dojo 2 in volume towards the end of next year. And that will be, we think, sort of comparable to sort of a B200 type system, a training system. I guess I have like some improved confidence in Dojo, but I think we won't really know how good Dojo is until probably version 3. Like, it usually takes 3 major iterations on a technology for it to be excellent. And we'll only have the second major iteration next year. the third iteration, I don't know, maybe late, 26 or something like that.
How's the Optimus project going? I remember when we talked last, and you said this publicly, that it's in doing some light testing inside the factory. So it's actually being useful. What's the build of materials, and when, for something like that at scale? So when you start making it like you're making the Model 3 now, and there's 1 million of them coming off the factory line, what would they cost? $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, you think?
Yeah, I've discovered that really that, anything made in sufficient volume will asymptotically approach the cost of its materials. So now some things are constrained by the cost of intellectual property and like paying for patents and stuff. So a lot of what's in a chip is like paying royalties and depreciation of the chip fab. So, but the actual marginal cost of the chips is very low. So Optimus, it obviously is a humanoid robot. It weighs much less and is much smaller than a car. So you could expect that in high volume, and I'd say that you also probably need three production versions of Optimus. So you need to refine the design at least three major times, and then you need to scale production to sort of the 1 million unit plus per year level. And I think at that point, the cost, the labor and materials on Optimus is probably not much more than $10,000.
Yeah, and that's a decade-long journey, maybe?
Basically, think of it like the Optimus will cost less than a small car.
Right.
So at scale volume with 3 major iterations of technology, and so if a small car costs $25,000, it's probably like $20,000 for an Optimus, for a humanoid robot that can be your buddy, like a combination of R2D2 and C3PO, but better.
Yeah,
and honestly, I think people are going to get really attached to their humanoid robot because like you look at you watch Star Wars and it's like R2D2 and C3PO. I love those guys.
Yeah.
They're awesome. I would say major iterations are less than 2 years, so
okay.
It's probably on the order of 5 years.
Yeah.
Maybe 6 to get to 1 million units a year.
And at that price point, everybody can afford one on planet Earth. It's going to be that 1-to-1, 2-to-1. What do you think ultimately, if we're sitting here in 30 years, the number of robots on the planet versus humans?
Yeah, I think the number of robots will vastly exceed the number of humans.
Vastly, yeah.
Vastly exceed. You have to say, like, who would not want their robot buddy? Everyone wants a robot buddy.
Totally.
It's just like, especially if it can, it can take care of take your dog for a walk. It could, mow the lawn. It could watch your kids. It could, it could teach your kids. It could.
We could also send it to Mars.
Absolutely.
We can send a lot of robots to Mars to do the work needed to make it a colonized planet for humans.
No, I think the sort of useful humanoid robot opportunity is the single biggest opportunity ever. Because if you assume like that, I think the ratio of humanoid robots to humans is going to be at least 2-to-1, maybe 3-to-1. Because everybody will want one, and then there'll be a bunch of robots that you don't see that are making goods and services.
And you think it's one generalized robot that then learns how to do different tasks, or?
Yeah.
Hey,
we are a generalized.
Yeah, we're a generalized non-robot.
We're just made of meat.
Yeah, exactly. We're a meat bot, a generalized meat bot.
Yeah, I'm operating my meat puppet, we are actually. And by the way, it turns out, like, as we're designing Optimus, we sort of learn more and more about why humans are shaped the way they're shaped, and why we have 5 fingers and why your little finger is smaller than your index finger. Obviously why you have opposable thumbs, but also why, for example, the muscles, the major muscles that operate your hand are actually in your forearm, and your fingers are primarily operated like the muscles that actuate your fingers are located. The vast majority of your finger strength is actually coming from your forearm, and your fingers are being operated by tendons, little strings. And so the current version of the Optimus hand has the actuators in the hand, and then the next generation hand has 22 degrees of freedom, which we think is enough to do almost anything that a human can do.
And presumably, I think it was written that X and Tesla may work together and provide services, but my immediate thought went to, if you just provide a grok to the robot, then the robot has a personality and can process voice and video and images and all of that stuff.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, our bestie, Elon Musk.